Hey there everyone and welcome to some more Tower Heroes level guides. In this video we're going to look at the melee dungeons levels 3 to 6. Now this video is a little bit longer than the other ones because the melee dungeons, a couple of them are quite interesting and I've showed them twice over because there's all the talking has to be done during the battle. I can't look at the sort of placements of the heroes to begin with and then do the battle. I've got to just look at the battle, which will be clear when we get to them, but I don't want to ramble about it. So this first level, Melee 3, actually another thing I want to say is that the melee dungeons, it's really down to the melee heroes, i.e. The melee attacker heroes, i.e. damage output. So there's no real way of getting around it. If your heroes aren't strong enough and you can't get enough damage output to kill the enemies, you are really going to struggle. It's not something that really clever technique and stuff can overcome, or using the map very well. It just comes down to, can you build your do you have strong enough heroes to deploy and kill the enemies? But yeah, there is some technique to talk about, and there's some specifics to the battles, which is what we're going to look at in this video. So the first battle is Melee 3. The enemies in this are unblockable, which means you've basically just got to put down the melee attackers. Defenders do work though. They will attack enemies that come past them. They just aren't going to block them. And also on this map you've got these different armor break points. So I don't know exactly how they work, whether they reduce the enemy armor by 50% or reduce it to 0. I don't know. But what I do know is your heroes do way more damage to enemies that are placed on that. So you want to take advantage of that by placing heroes kind of next to them, and they're going to wreck the enemies. Let's have a look at the video, at the clip itself. So the level of my heroes, I'm using low level heroes for this. They're all either 1, they're all 2 to 4 star heroes. This should be very doable when you start out. But like I said, you may need to level your heroes up a little bit before you can do it, or otherwise have a small collection of them, so you're not kind of hinging on say 3 or 4 damage dealers. So yeah, I start off by putting Victoria and Remus down. Now this little setup is actually quite useful, where Victoria was going to chip down the enemy and then Remus gets the killing blow, which means that Remus is getting 1 CP off each of those kills, while Victoria is actually also generating CP because she does it from her skill. So that, I do really highly recommend doing that, and I don't know how many battles it would be possible to do something like that with CP generators, but it's a little thing to keep in the back of your mind that might come up. So general idea here is I've put 2 melee attackers at the top, 2 at the bottom. They're both setups are built around these armor break zones, which I cannot remember what they're called in the game, but that kind of will do the majority of it. And then I put down some other heroes just for good measure. You can see I'm putting down water heroes, even though it's nature enemies. It doesn't really matter. You just need damage dealers for this particular battle. And those first 4 that I put down are actually kind of going to do it themselves. You don't really need all the rest of it. But yeah, once you've got a collection with enough damage dealers, you should be able to do this battle no problem. And it's just a case of waiting until it's done, because you can see we're only actually halfway through with the enemies, but I've placed down 8 heroes. This battle's quite long, really, a bit longer than it needed to be. And there aren't huge waves of loads of enemies or anything. It's mostly kind of just scattered enemies coming through. So I don't particularly know why they made it so long. I mean, they're doing big enemies with the dogs here, but it's fine. So that was second last wave. We've got last wave now. A few more bigger enemies. You can use the skills while the enemies are on those patches. You can see I did that with Silver just a few seconds ago, which will mean that the damage is much better. So yeah, we just about did it. That was Melee 3. So Melee 4, 5 and 6 all have the same kind of setup. So now it's not unblockable enemies anymore, but there are very separate sections of the map which enemies are going to spawn in, and you can sell your heroes and redeploy them in just 5 seconds rather than 1 minute that it normally is. So the idea is you're meant to put down heroes in one zone, kill off enemies there, then sell them, place them in another zone, and do that to place heroes where the enemies are. Pretty fun, pretty cool. This first one is the very simplest version of that. So I was able to get a screenshot here with the whole setup in there. The next 2, that's why I'm going to show them twice, is because we can't show the whole setup of where I have the heroes. But this is the setup I used for this one. You can see we've got the 3 paths. The enemies are going to come in the left, then the middle, then the right, and you just need some damage dealers in each one. The middle one I've put Roland down so you can see how OP Roland is in this particular battle. on the left we're actually going to have a few more heroes there at the time when the enemies are coming through. But you can sell them and move them across safely because there aren't going to be any more enemies coming through each of the paths once they have their wave. So to look at my heroes, which I've got for this, there are some high level heroes in this. It's just because you have to use a lot of different melee attackers. I recommend making a full team of melee attackers for this. You can't obviously put down any healers or anything. So yeah, you can use some defenders as well, of course. But anyway, so we've got Victoria, and then I've used Li Zhen. Li Zhen's going to do a better job, so I support Victoria with another damage dealer here. And that's not quite enough, so I put down Edwin too. In fact, Victoria's now going to die off, unfortunately. But, oh yeah, so I put down Felwyn in front. There we go. So I put down Felwyn to survive that, and you can see I've got the Chandra, who's like attacks 2, so she can still attack where Felwyn is. Now we've got the middle section. You can, like I said, fully sell off everything on the left-hand side. You don't need to keep anything there. You can sell them all off and then place some stuff in the middle. Also, nothing's stopping you from placing stuff on the right. So I've done this with Bruno because he takes a while to charge up his skill. So you can be charging it up, ready in time for when the enemies are there. Roland just wrecking those enemies there. Yeah, if you don't have Roland, it doesn't really matter because as long as you've got a good enough setup to kill enemies in one of the sections, you should be fine because you can like reuse half of those along with some other ones and then do the other half in the third section. The reason why I'm saying it like that is because their cost does increase when you sell them off. So you don't want to reuse the same hero 3 times, but you can reuse them once and it should be okay. So that was this battle. Not too bad once you've got enough melee attackers, but like I said, you do need to reach that point where you've got a lot of melee attackers. Jumping straight in with Melee 5, we have the top right corner first of all, so there's quite a lot of enemies here. They're water as well, so you want to use nature heroes if possible, and you need probably about 4 or 5 of them to be able to take off the hordes of enemies up there. You can see some broke through on that bottom row, so I needed Azria behind. Now on the bottom left, I use 5 and 6 star heroes here, so I only needed 3 of them to take them out. We've got some bigger enemies that come through which are a bit tougher to deal with, but there's less like kind of big groups of them. Now we've got the top left where we've got a bunch of enemies here. Roland's kind of not really showing you what the enemies are because he's killing them off too quickly. But I do believe this is a smaller group. I think that's the smallest, that's the easiest battle is in the top left. And now we've got the bottom right where we're going to have these, some more enemies coming through. A bit of an interesting shape as well to go through. So that was that. Looking at the level of my heroes, if you want to pause it there and have a look. 5 and 6 stars, like kind of Evo 2, Evo 3. That's what we're looking at. You need a lot of defenders and melee attackers for this, basically. So that was kind of a quick look. Now we're going to look again. So you can just gives me a bit more time to talk about the technique. So I started with a defender on the top row and Remus. I put a defender in front of Remus to help them survive a lot better. Like I said, you do need defenders for this because there's a lot of quite tough enemies, and then you need the melee attackers behind to actually be killing off the enemies. You can't put any healers in this, so you need to be able to survive the enemies with those defenders. So once those are all dead, you can sell off all your heroes, put stuff down in the bottom left. I've put Carl facing downwards, so he's going to attack any enemies that are on Bruno as well. And then I use Bruno's skill. I placed him a bit early, so he'd have his skill in time to use when there were the big enemies there. And that's going to hit both rows as well, so, just 5 and 6 stars, getting the job done very nicely. So this one, you don't need so much. I've done the technique of having a defender on the bottom row and then a melee attacker above it facing down, so it's going to cover it similar to what I did with Carl and Bruno. And then we've got another melee attacker in there just for good measure. But yeah, you don't need so many heroes here probably. And while that was going on, I set up the bottom right where I've got another defender with a melee attacker facing it, and then some melee attackers. They're kind of positioned in a way where I always have 2 attacking any one row, and in fact Roland's going to cover the top row, so there's 3 attacking there. I think it's a smaller group, I'm not entirely sure, but there are some tougher enemies in there too. So that's this battle. A lot of fun, but yeah, you need the melee attackers to be able to do it and the defenders to tank it as well. So again, jumping straight in with Melee 6, this first little quick sped up run is just going to show you what's going on with this battle. So we've got some enemies coming in on the right hand side, groups of small enemies, not too challenging, but you can see my heroes are only just about managed to get through that. Then on the left-hand side, we've got some bigger enemies coming in with some smaller enemies. Got a much larger setup to get through this because it is a tougher battles going on. Got a lot of dogs there on the left-hand side, which ate through my heroes. Only Bruno tanking up in the middle. So now we've got the middle section. Scattered small enemies coming through on each of the 3 rows. Then we've got a big enemy in the middle. We've got some more scattered ones. And then another big enemy in the middle. And then another bigger enemy in the middle. And then there'll be a 4th big enemy in the middle. You can probably see what I'm getting at there. That middle row is a bit of a challenge. Sorry, middle column is a bit of a challenge. We then got some enemies on the right-hand side again. Again, not too much. And then we've got both the left and the middle. On the middle here, we just have a big enemy on the left and then the right. And that's this battle. So 100 enemies. Let's go and look at it a little bit more properly. So those are the heroes which I used for it. I didn't use super high level heroes, but obviously the higher they are, the better you're going to do, because you need to both tank and have good damage output for this, similar to the last level. Again, it's like, the cheap, very quick redeploy that you can do with heroes. But one of the things which I did do was I kept heroes in certain sections because setting them and redeploying them costs quite a lot of CP, so you want to try and save on that where you can. So Lee Zen I'm going to leave there. I've done a setup of a defender with Victoria behind, Victoria having the element advantage, so she's going to be a good damage dealer to deal with that. I then keep Lee Zen, I set up Bruno in advance, and this setup here, I'm not using a defender on the left, I am using Bruno on the right. A defender on the left would be ideal. You can see my melee attack is getting kind of killed a bit there, and that is what I struggle with the dogs on the left hand side, that I had to deploy an additional hero behind, I believe. I think I might do it right at the end. Oh no, just about make it through, that's right. I think later when I did this, when I redid the technique, I put a 3rd hero down behind because sometimes the enemies got through. So now in the middle, we get these scattered enemies. One big thing to say is because when you 3-star this, you then get the auto battle. The auto battle can really mess up on these if your heroes sometimes die, sometimes don't die, because then you don't have them to redeploy, you maybe don't have the CP from selling them, that kind of stuff. So make sure whatever technique you use that it is very reliable so that the auto battle does it properly, or otherwise make sure you sell your heroes just before they die so that then it's always sold on the auto battle to then be redeployed, or perhaps you deploy something in place there, and it needs to be consistent in whichever way you do it. So a few enemies on the right, we just had to deploy a couple of heroes there, deploy a bit more on the left to take these down, and you can really hammer down the heroes at this point because this is the last kind of bits of it. And like I said, you have these 2 big enemies in the central section which you've got to put down some heroes for. So that was this battle, quite a complicated one, takes a lot of working out, but I hope from this video it's giving you the information that you need. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a video soon.